So talk a little bit about um, how you see leadership really playing a part in driving this societal change.
Yeah, I'll talk a little bit about the societal change, but I want to build it up a little bit with something you just referenced, and that is the power that can be unleashed if we actually solve this problem. I think that's a really good, and I'm glad you brought up a really good kind of base that helps us understand why that public leadership is so critical. So when someone is burdened with post-traumatic stress symptoms, it really has a negative impact on their ability to contribute to their communities, whether that be their immediate family system, their workplace, their broader community, or our nation or the world in its entirety. When that when they learn how to manage through that trauma successfully, that potential gets released, and it's like this powerful wave that happens. We often refer to it as post-traumatic growth. So liberating, that's why we use that term liberating. When we help liberate individuals from child sexual abuse, individually, they create a ton of impact themselves. When we talk about liberating society, it's the cumulative effect of liberating not only survivors, but liberating society from the burden of the continual cycle of bringing new abuse into our world. Because
Mm.
that new abuse not only burdens the individual, but also burdens the family, the immediate communities, the broader communities. So it really does unleash a ton of potential. And one thing we know about our country specifically is when we finally choose to solve a problem, we're really good at it. I'm
Right.
not saying we solve it overnight, but once we choose, we are really good at it. The problem is helping us make the choice. So that's where that public leadership comes in, and what's often referred to as societal change theory. And this is an area of personal work for me. I don't know that I would call myself a full-on expert yet, but I've developed a lot of expertise
Mm.
in societal change theory. How do you move broad societal norms, which is very different than how do you help an individual change? How do you help society change? Are different levers that you pull than how you help an individual change. So at the highest level, that public leadership around societal change, like many things, you have to ask what do we have to do, who has to be involved, and how do we do it? And I've relied on tremendous experts from the academic world and some from the consulting world to really help me form my opinion on how this question gets answered. And these experts have studied it extensively. And so at Sapria, we do a lot of work to pull these macro levers. And I'm going to just give you a couple of quick examples of what I'm talking about to connect the dots. So one of those macro levers we have to pull is issue awareness. So we know from research that only about 30% of Americans believe child sexual abuse is a solvable problem. So think about that. Nearly 70% of Americans don't even think the problem can be solved. So if that's our belief, if that is our current mindset as a society, even if we think it's a horrific problem, why are we going to invest time and energy to addressing the problem if we don't even believe it's solvable? So that is a mental construct, a societal norm that has to change
Right.
if we're going to solve that problem. So issue awareness is the what, meaning the solution to address that particular issue. So we've got to move that needle to where instead of 30% of Americans believe it's solvable, how about 50%? How about 70%? And eventually 100%. In order to do that, we have to help the public through issue awareness understand the issue, understand their power to impact the issue, how they can leverage that power to impact the issue for good, and make it easy for them. We do that through issue awareness campaigns. So that's kind of one of those key societal change principles. We've seen this in past movements. So if we look at something like, I'll take one that I lived through. When I was a kid, I was not in a seatbelt. I was certainly not in a car seat. And when I was driving down the road, I might have even been hanging out the window. By the time I was a parent, there was no way in the world my child was going home from the hospital in anything but a car seat.
Right.
How did that shift happen? That's societal change. And in that case, there were several levers that were pulled, but going back to our example, one of those big levers that was pulled was issue awareness. There were a ton of awareness campaigns that hit us as a society between the time when I was a little child and by the time I was a parent that said you need to buckle up your children. And they came in various flavors, various forms, various campaigns, but there was a ton of work done in it. That's a real life past example of this particular principle. The actors, there's 9 actors involved in societal change. A few examples would be nonprofits, corporations, public administrators, policymakers, there's faith leaders, there's many others. Those actors got involved and started caring about the issue and influenced the public. So you have to engage the actors if you're going to engage societal
Right.
change.
Right.
And then the last thing, which is kind of the how, there are certain techniques that are used to influence people. And specifically, I draw on the teachings from Crucial Influence by Joseph Grenny and some of his colleagues that talks about 6 sources of influence based on motivation and ability. And that motivation and ability at the personal level, at the peer level, and at the structural level. So there's different levels. So like structural motivation, you have to put policies in place to help structurally motivate society to shift. You have to do personal motivation. Anyway, I won't go into all the details because it can get pretty complex pretty quick, but at least it gives you a sense of what I mean when I say you pull these macro levers. Societal change theory is about pulling these macro levers, doing them systematically in order to help society shift their norms and how they see an issue and how they address an issue.